Hi everyone, I'm Tim Derling. It's time for another edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Thank you as always for tuning in. On this episode I'm going through my Heart CD collection, a band that I've been a fan of for a long time. But for me they're a little bit like Foreigner, a little bit like REO Speedwagon, whereas great singles, really good singles, great radio rock. Not always the most consistent of albums, although there are some exceptions, and it is just my opinion. Their CDs have been on various labels over the years, and they've been issued a few times. I thought I'd go over the ones that I happen to have. So we'll start off with the first Heart album, one of their best, Dreamboat Annie. Now, if you bought this on record in Canada, it was on Mushroom Records, and it has a copyright date of 1975 on it. This edition is a Canadian Columbia House version. You can see it's very much Capitol, their 70s and early 80s reissues looked like. And it has a copyright date on it of 1976. There's been several versions of this put out. There's even like budget line versions. This one doesn't have any pictures in it, not a lot for credits, but it suits me. Second Heart album, 1977, Little Queen. This, of course, contained Barracuda, one of their signature songs, and it's a pretty good album from start to finish. The band started out as very Zeppelin sounding and ended up more commercial from the mid '80s period onward. Well, not onward, but for quite a few years. This is a Canadian Columbia House version. It's very much in the old style CBS Canada CDs. So the printing looks like that, and the back cover is what I call the box style, where there's no artwork, no pictures. It's just this grid, really, that the song titles are filled in. I used to kind of dislike those, but now I'm kind of nostalgic for them. There's the CD itself, back cover of the booklet, and almost nothing for credits, just the songwriting credits. There was a little bit of confusion between Mushroom Records and then them signing to Portrait CBS Records, the whole Barracuda story and nasty rumors, and anyway, they ended up switching labels in the middle of making an album. And Mushroom Records, which is just a small Canadian label, I mean, they were the biggest thing that was ever on that label. And when they found out they were going to be, switching to another label, they basically put out some songs that the band had been working on and released it as an album. Originally came out in 1978. I don't think it saw CD release for quite a long time. This version that I have is from '95. It's called Magazine. Not a great album. Heartless was a top 40 single off of this one. Got a lot of airplay. As you can see, this is a CEMA Capital Special Products, Special Markets. Put this version out. Found this in '95, and this is a Canadian version. It's just a single card. There's nothing inside of this. A little bit of customization on the CD label. I was glad to see this because it was a hole in the collection, so I'm glad they put it out in some form or another. So the next album, also with a 1978 copyright date on it, Dog and Butterfly. And this is a US edition on Portrait, so it's a typical CBS look to this CD. So unlike the Canadian versions, it actually reproduces the back cover art. You can see that it's a shorter album because of the band on the CD itself here. You can see where the tracks actually end. Hopefully you can see that. A little bit more inside of it. It's got the gatefold cover that was in the record as well, and the credits. The next Heart album came out in 1980. It's called Baby Lestrange. This is anybody that bought CDs, cassettes, even records in the 70s and 80s recognize the nice price. That's something that CBS did. A little faded on the side there. And this one is the first one in my collection that actually has, it's got significant credits inside here. So the picture of the band and lyrics and credits here. Next album, the next release that came out, a little bit of a curiosity. It's called Greatest Hits Live. Greatest Hits / Live. So sometimes it's just called Greatest Hits. That's exactly what it is. Half of it is studio tracks, half of it is various live tracks. And what I've got here is a Canadian version of this. And this omits a few songs in order to get everything onto one disc. It even says that. Due to compact disc programming limitations, 3 selections have been deleted from the original album program. So in a weird situation, the stuff that Hart did for Mushroom, which was Dreamboat Annie and Magazine, CBS and their later label Capitol had access to them. There were never any, so there was no difference between putting different versions of the songs out. Unlike some labels that, you'll see an example of where they had to settle for live versions. So anyway, another Canadian box design for this. This was a double album, of course. And this shows either the album that these songs came from or if they're live, where they were recorded. It's actually a pretty good starter for anyone that was interested in just checking out the early Hart stuff. So now we're moving on to the 80s. The albums get a little bit more eclectic. Pre-comeback, that is. 1982, Private Audition, another U.S. edition on Portrait. Actually, by now they were on Epic. Same master label, CBS. Cities Burning is a great song off this one. These are not my favorite albums by them. So this reprints the lyric sleeve, the front and back covers of the lyric sleeve. Next one, and the last album that they did for CBS Records came out in '83. It was called Passion Works. Now by now, the lineup is the comeback lineup, but this was not a comeback album for them. It does contain one really good song, first track, How Can I Refuse, which is almost a top 40 single. Really like that one. This is a U.S. edition. Look down along the side here. It's now made in the USA. So the original CDs were manufactured in Japan, and a lot of early CBS issues that were bought in the States were like that. So they wanted to make a point of showing that they were now made in the USA once they started doing that. I have a few older ones, no Hart ones, but I have a few older ones that say they were manufactured in Japan. This one's folds out like so. So again, we're just basically recreating what would be on the record sleeve. Now, me being the age that I am, I'd never even heard of Hart until 1985 when I heard What About Love in the top 40 radio station. This was their big comeback, and a lot of people slagged this era. It was overly commercial. They used a lot of outside songwriters. I've just showed you that I've already gone back and listened to all the other stuff, so it's, for the purists, it's not always bad things that come out of that. Plus, I think there was just some great radio rock for the 80s. I mean, I grew up on this stuff. This was the album that did it for them. Self-titled, and kind of like Whitesnake did with their 1987 album, kind of rebranding them. People might think they were a brand new band, even though they weren't, so there we go. Very 1985 in the fashions, well, and in the music. So this is a Canadian version of this album on Capitol. This was a huge album for them, 4 top 10 singles. And what's unique about the CD version of this, one of the hits off of this was the song Never. There are 2 quite different mixes of the song. If you're not paying attention, you might not notice, but the version that's on this CD is different than the version that was on the cassette and some issues of the record. And I prefer the version that's on the CD. It's a little bit more guitar-driven than keyboards. It's a subtle thing, but it's when that one comes on, when I hear it come on like the radio, I go, which one? Ah, good, it's this one. Anyway, here's the disc itself. And Yeah, this one has full credits and basically everything that would have been inside of the record. Next thing to come out was in '87. The follow-up was almost as successful, Bad Animals, which also became the name of the group's home studio in Seattle, which a lot of Seattle groups have recorded at. This is a Canadian issue on Capitol, Canadian Columbia House issue. Pretty much no surprises, just the same stuff that would have been inside the record. Probably the cassette too. Lyrics and credits of some pictures. Now, one of my favorite Heart albums from start to finish is the one that came out in 1990. This is Brigade. This features some songwriting contributions from Mutt Lange. Sammy Hagar co-wrote a couple songs on here. This is some pretty good stuff on here. This is a Canadian version on Capitol Records. Very colorful. Pretty thick booklet with this one. All the lyrics and credits. That was their last really big album. Because of course, I mean, it's kind of ironic that the kind of band that they were, they, like so many other melodic rock bands, were affected by the Seattle takeover at grunge, even though they're from Seattle. It's just one of those things. 1991, Capitol put a live album out. This is kind of an interesting track list. It's called Rock the House Live. And as the title may suggest, it does focus on some of their harder sounding songs. And it was recorded, you know, on the Brigade tour. So they've continued the Brigade look here, the way that the band name is written. I mean, this has things on it like How Can I Refuse, as I mentioned, Love Alive, and If Looks Good Kill. Not a lot of hit singles on this one. Like, not a lot of the hits are performed on this one. And it wasn't a successful album. This is a US or a Canadian edition on Capitol. And the final Heart album to come out on Capitol Records came out in 1993. It's called Desire Walks On. And this is actually a US version on Capitol. It's a BMG Music Service version. I picked this one up used. In my opinion, not a great album. A few key songs on here. Black on Black is really good. It's kind of all over the place stylistically. Kind of getting more 90s with the packaging here. Next thing that came out in 1995. They did sort of a, I don't want to say an unplugged show. Well, it kind of was an unplugged show. And it was released as The Road Home. This is a Canadian version, Columbia House issue of this one. There's a few covers on here. They do Love Hurts, best known for Nazareth's version, of course. Sun River, which is a Joni Mitchell song. Stuff really, this is kind of a, you know, a mellow album to put on. It's definitely not a rocking album. And for a band that's always been influenced by Led Zeppelin, I'm sure it was a thrill for them because John Paul Jones helps out on this with some arrangements. And there's a lengthy interview with both Ann and Nancy Wilson in this about choosing the songs that appeared on here. Now, at this point, you know, there's going to be a lot of compilations to talk about. Any band that's been around that long and amassed that many hits, especially for two distinct labels, there's going to be different compilations. This is what I got from Columbia House, just because I thought it was an interesting track listing. In the mid-90s, Sony Music put up this definitive collection. You've seen probably other bands that have this definitive collection along the bottom, and what they do is they just put together a collage of pictures from various album covers, which is kind of cool. Obviously, there's none other Capitol hits on this one. This is strictly Sony. nothing much in it for credits. When I first got this, I didn't have all of their albums on CD, so there were a few songs on here. This is the first time I had CD versions of them. 1997, Capitol Records puts this release out. Greatest Hits, it says here. It's actually subtitled as These Dreams, Heart's Greatest Hits. Now this is a pretty good compilation, but of course they don't have the rights to the studio versions of the CBS material, so you'll see there's things on here like an acoustic version of Dog and Butterfly, from the Road Home album, which they owned the rights to, live version of Barracuda from Rock the House Live, and yet there's Crazy on You, Magic Man. I mean, the Mushroom Record stuff, they just take it, they just license it. This is a Canadian Columbia House version. Kind of a, you know, a little bit of a write-up about the group in here, and sometimes that's, you know, is worth it for anything for picking up. A little bit of the discography, not all of it, of course. And the very next year, in 1998, Sony released another compilation simply titled Greatest Hits. I still see this one at Walmart once in a while. This is all Sony material, with one new song on it called Strong, Strong Wind. And that's actually a ticket stub from a classic rock double two-night bill that Heart were the headliner the first night, and they were really good, so that's the ticket stub I kept in here. I forgot about that. Lyrics to all of the songs mixed in with some pictures. And yeah, a little bit of credits here and a little write-up too. Now, if someone's going to get one thing by Heart that kind of covers all the bases, there is such a disc, and it's this. Another Sony series, The Essential. This happened in the early 2000s, and what makes this one really good and really useful is that they got the rights to use the Capitol material as well. So this basically combines the two very distinctive eras of Heart and blends them all together. So if there's a song you like by them, chances are, if you're just a casual listener, you'll find it on disc 1 or disc 2 of this. And there's all of the albums there. Pretty strong write-up here, because this is the first time that anybody's ever been able to put all of their best material in one place. The next studio album to come out happened in 2004. It's called Jupiter's Darling. This was on a label. This is the only album I have that's on this label called Sovereign Artists. I think this is a U.S. edition. Some interesting packaging in this one. And that was the band as it was in 2004. If you're a astute fan of Seattle music scene, you recognize this guy here. That's actually Mike Inez, who started out as bass player for Ozzy, but he ended up in Alice in Chains. As far as I know, he's still in Alice in Chains. So the booklet, this is the booklet that came with it. All the lyrics and credits. Next thing to come out from them, I didn't get when it first came out. It was a couple years later. It's called Red Velvet Car. I have a cool cover on here. One of those annoying CDs that they put the label on like this, so I have to flip it over. Some really heavy stuff on this one. It's quite good. This was on Eagle Records, which is a UK label. It was licensed in the US. Advertisement for a DVD here. And, of course, lyrics and credits to everything. So kind of bouncing around between labels here at this point. Although, In 2012, they were back with Sony, Legacy to be exact, for the album Fanatic, which again had some good material on here. Title song comes to mind. And this came out in late 2012. This is an advertisement for Strange Euphoria, which was a 4-disc, I guess you could call it a box set, although it didn't come in an actual box. And it's got all the lyrics credits in here. And so far, and I don't know if we're going to see another one, the most recent Heart release came out in 2016. It's called Beautiful Broken. And they put this out on kind of their own label, Concord Records. This is a combination of re-recordings of old songs and some new material. The re-recordings sound good, and the new material is quite good. The title song, Beautiful Broken, is actually contains kind of a duet between Ann Wilson and James Hetfield of Metallica, which is it might sound strange, but it actually came off really, really cool. Got all the lyrics here. And the credits at the end. So that is a look at my Heart CD collection. Are there any other albums that I should, go back and listen to? You think I didn't give a fair shake, maybe? Need to give them another listen? It's always possible. Thanks for watching. Tim's Vinyl Confessions.